Hello everyone, welcome to Get a Grip, the voice of the silent majority. If you could give this video a like, share it wherever you can, and subscribe to the channel, that would be great. If you want to support this channel, we've got some merchandise and we've also got a GoFundMe. There are links to all of that and all of our other social media in the description to this video, so any support would be great. Please follow us on those other platforms as well. That's why we've been quite busy, and let's get into it. So I've been quite active lately on Twitter and Instagram, trying to debate with the good old lefty salt. The hardest thing with that is actually getting anyone from that side of the argument to actually have a debate, rather than to just call you names and then swear at you and then block you, which seems to be the standard routine. So part of this video is a follow-up really as to why I won't support Black Lives Matter. Don't believe the hype. Black Lives Matter is deceiving and playing the black community against each other and the white community. The group have used the emotional Black Lives Matter tagline to hide their true agenda. Why don't Black Lives Matter put their resources into freeing sub-Saharan Africans who are slaves today in many West and North African countries and indeed the Middle East? Libya has a prolific slave trade today. No mention of this from Black Lives Matter. So who are Black Lives Matter? I've covered this in previous videos, but just going to give you a brief sort of overview. Black Lives Matter is a divisive, hateful, racist and vengeful organisation run by a political circle of far-left Marxist, socialist and communist activists. They align themselves with any minority and other, mainly white, middle-class groups such as Antifa, whose sole purpose is to cause racial tension, bring about the downfall of Western society and replace it with chaos and anarchy. It says in the Bible, "Beware of the false prophets who come to you in sheep's clothing, but inwardly are ravenous wolves." Black Lives Matter are the false prophets. The organisation has capitalised on the murder of George Floyd for political gains, fueling anger and hate, aided by Antifa and the left-wing media and many socialist politicians. A vast number of people and organisations have been manipulated by the mainstream media and social media into believing that Black Lives Matter actually stands for equal treatment and rights for blacks and ethnic minority groups, and that it calls out police brutality and systematic racism. We'll touch on that a bit later, because at the moment it seems pretty difficult to pin this organisation down. This is because they just continue to lie. This lie has compelled individuals, organisations and companies to donate funds and resources to Black Lives Matter, in the belief that their donations will be used to help, support and improve the lives of black and other minority communities. This is not true. We will see very little real help or money going into these communities. In America, most of the money raised by Black Lives Matter is channeled to propaganda and to fund hard left organisations like Antifa and assist with the re-election of left-wing, mainly white Democrat politicians. The Democrat Party in the US is the equivalent of the Labour Party in the UK. Both claim to be the party for black, ethnic and many other minorities. Not many people will know that the Democrat Party in the US formed the KKK. They fought to keep slavery in the Civil War. They lost that war, and after losing the last election to President Trump, their politics have become solely based on identity and division. Their aim is to create a state of emergency that can be exploited solely for political gain. The Democrats under Obama and Clinton did nothing to support the black community, except talk. Joe Biden was the architect of the 1994 crime bill. that incarcerated more blacks than any other law. Even today, Biden does not agree this was a mistake and stands by the 1994 bill. President Trump has revised this bill and introduced the First Step Act. This gives non-violent offenders help who are being held under fixed-term sentences, which is what the Biden Act basically put in place. Trump has decided to give these people a second chance. This enables fixed-term sentences to be reviewed and early release possible, and real support to help these individuals rejoin society as a productive citizen. This type of action has never been taken by any president at any point in US history. This just adds to the hypocrisy of the left, really. They're the ones who call Trump a racist, when it's Trump that's actually done more for black and ethnic minorities in the US than any Democrat president has done. Unemployment is the lowest it's ever been for these groups. Prosperity is good. The amount of people, black individuals who have been killed by the police has never been so low. The numbers under Obama were 5 to 10 times higher, and yet these same Democrats claim that it's Trump that's the racist. It's just a joke. So, Black Lives Matter UK doesn't have a head office or any real structure or accountability. We assume that they're scrambling to reorganise in light of their newfound wealth and public position. The organisation's GoFundMe states that the identity of their activists must remain secret due to possible security threats. The only thing it does make clear is that anyone who is a current activist or wants to be a future recruit must be black. The statement lacks credibility, and we assume the organisation is currently reorganising to ensure it only shows its black faces to the public. This anti-white position will surely alienate the vast number of self-loathing white people who have jumped on the bandwagon and rushed to protest and support Black Lives Matter. Black Lives Matter lists its Marxist aims on its website. These include dismantling imperialism, dismantling capitalism, the patriarchy, abolishing the police, although this has mysteriously disappeared in recent weeks after a backlash, and closing prisons. That's just amazing. The scenes we've witnessed from Seattle's Chaz, or as the Democrat mayor of Seattle put it, the summer of love, and now the heavily armed Black Panther militia roaming the streets, intimidating whites and demanding reparations, a black-only state. This gives us some insight into how this would actually pan out. It wouldn't work. Dismantling capitalism means they desire the alternative, communism, which is ironic, as communism uses identity politics and most times, as we've seen in history, brutally kills millions of people, installs tyrants and dictators, and doesn't end well if you're on the wrong side of the fence when it comes to identity. What on earth does dismantling capitalism have to do with making black lives better? Capitalism is the system that has lifted millions out of absolute poverty in just this century alone. How would tearing down wealth creation benefit blacks? The slogan of this campaign is indisputable. Of course, Black Lives Matter. However, it cannot stand alone. I can only agree that Black Lives Matter once we all agree that all lives matter, no matter what race or colour. Black Lives Matter is an emotional tagline and a clever marketing tool. If you're white and you speak out against it, you're automatically labelled a racist, a xenophobe, far right or a Nazi. These labels are then used to try and cancel you and shut down any reasonable discussion. If you're black, as I've heard from quite high profile celebrities, you're called an Uncle Tom and a coon. And this is by other members of the black community. Every individual, whatever their skin colour, should have the right to pursue happiness and live free from prejudice, racial discrimination and injustice. That is all people. It's so frustrating to see large numbers of people, and especially young people, manipulated into what can only be described as a cult, virtue signalling, satanically chanting, "I can't breathe, no justice, no peace." Watching these protests is like a scene from the Omen horror films, or a cult brainwashed by false prophets praying for the return of the Antichrist. Many people are supporting and donating to Black Lives Matter, including big business and politicians, without any idea what the true intentions of this organisation are. All we've seen is Black Lives Matter fan the flames of racism, make unsupported claims of police brutality, attack culture and demand the destruction of history and the symbols and lessons of the past. These actions are akin to what we have seen the communist regimes do and the Nazi Party. The Nazi Party of the 1930s brainwashed people into walking down the streets holding banners saying, "We love everybody," just before they started World War II and the genocide of the Jews. Virtue signalling is a form of vanity. Making a statement because it makes you look good and virtuous, or it allows you to claim the moral high ground on your social media posts. I've found that when questioned, many of those who do this will not enter a debate or back up any statement or post that they've made with reason or fact. You're usually met with, "You're uneducated, you're a racist, and you can off," and then you're blocked. You know, it's quite boring really when you try to debate these people. They have no backup to what they're saying. Black Lives Matter are using black people as the buffalo soldiers for left-wing Democrats. This is the same for the Labour Party in the UK. Groups like Antifa, the Marxist billionaire George Soros, and along with the corrupt Clinton Foundation. All of these groups and organisations have a political agenda. They have nothing to do with black lives. As we've seen, Black Lives Matter only protests when the event fits their narrative and agenda. This call to action only happens when a white person is involved in the killing of a black person. Just yesterday, I watched the interview with Terry Crews and Don Lemon on CNN. And Don Lemon actually said that Black Lives Matter are not protesting about all black lives, and that the black on black murder rate and black on black violence isn't part of what Black Lives Matter stands for. They are only interested in police brutality. Now, some of these figures are shocking. You know, if you look at statistics about, how likely a black person is to be arrested or shot or, killed by the police in America, this is the figure that any sort of Black Lives Matter advocate will put before you, and I'll show you a graph on it. It looks really high. If you look at black arrest rates, etc., if you take those figures at that level and look at them on their own, they do look terrible. What they don't show you is the amount of people, black people, that were resisting arrest, that were carrying a weapon, that had already attacked somebody, that were in the process of committing a crime. When you look at unarmed black people, the figures are very, very small. I think in 2019, and I'll throw the graph up here, it was 2. I've got some other graphs I'm going to throw up on the screen for you, because really, when you look at it, these are the things that Black Lives Matter are protesting against. No, they're not. They are using those statistics and they are using those events purely to create chaos. They don't address or comment or protest about thousands of black-on-black murders in the US and the UK. Look at London. We've got a gun and a knife crime epidemic in London, and around the country, to be fair. And it's mostly black on black or minority on minority. But, we don't hear anything from Black Lives Matter on that. It's only in the last couple of days we see Black Lives Matter protesters in America have killed an 8-year-old girl, a black girl, simply because, her mother couldn't turn a car around quick enough. The death toll from Black Lives Matter is far greater than any event they're protesting. And it's taken many more black lives than, the death of George Floyd, or the very few, and let's say innocent black people that have been killed by the police. Some of the figures now are, I think there was 2 young black men killed in the Chaz or the Chop in Seattle. We've now got, I think it's 2 children, several other crimes of people being shot. This is what happens when you let gangbangers out to roam the streets and impose, their form of the law. The left are deceitful. They use identity politics to divide and manipulate. This has enabled them to gain support from groups and communities that only share a perceived position in the hierarchy of oppression. These groups, as listed on the Black Lives Matter UK website, include black and ethnic minorities and the LGBTQ+ community, along with Muslims. We've already seen how this short-sighted rush for support has resulted in 3 men from the LGBTQ+ community being murdered by, I'll say, a Muslim. There's some debate. Was he Muslim? Was he converted to Christianity? Doesn't really make a difference. Okay, he is from the BAME community. He is also an asylum seeker. And these murders took place after the Black Lives Matter UK demonstration in Reading. Black Lives Matter immediately distanced themselves from this event because it wasn't a white person or, a far-right person attacking one of their members. Technically, it was people within their same group, the same group that they claim to stand up for, attacking each other. I'd also like to just say on that, I was going to do a video on it, but I'm probably not going to. That man has been charged with 3 counts of murder, 3 counts of attempted murder. We have no idea who the other 3 victims are, the ones that survived. And also, he's not been charged with any terrorist crime. So to me, that is a blatant cover-up. I said it then, and I'll continue to say it. The socialists and the left-wing media fuel fears based on identity and portray minorities as victims constantly. The BBC are probably the worst at this. Just yesterday we see that, 2 athletes, British athletes, have pretty much been pulled over in a routine stop or basically failed to stop, drove off at high speed, etc., etc. And immediately they claim this is racial profiling. I hear the car had blacked out windows. How on earth would the police be able to profile you through blacked out windows? I mean, this is just the level of stupidity that we're getting to in this country, The police have to be able to police regardless of colour. You can't just claim racism just because you're being stopped by the police. If I get stopped by the police, I do what the police say, mainly because I've done nothing wrong. I don't have this privilege of screaming racism. And that's what it is. You have the privilege to scream racism, whereas I don't. You know, the fear and the hatred that the media create is basically used to gain support for left-wing socialist politicians. You know, they pretend to be the prophets of change, but really all they want is votes. They just want to gain power, nothing more. I'm going to finish this video with a look at what happens when you question the motives of Black Lives Matter. And have a look at this from the perspective of a black political commentator. Her name is Esther Kweku, and she's written a very interesting article for the Mail Online. And basically, the headline is, "I dared to question the aims of Black Lives Matter and got the worst racial abuse I have ever suffered." And guess what? That abuse wasn't from white people. So just before we get into this article by Esther Kweku, I just want to thank everyone that's joined the channel, that's commented, that's shared and subscribed. You're the reason why we do this. We really value your feedback, your comments. Thanks to everyone that got involved on the community page the other day. Some great ideas there for some videos. Now, I'm new on YouTube. This channel is new. I do think we are already being suppressed by the algorithms. So if you could share this video and share the channel on every platform you can, that would really help us out. I think that just, hitting the like button helps as well. Don't really know how all of this works. As you know, just started this to start speaking up. But yeah, we really appreciate you being with us, because it's about us, the voice of the silent majority. Let's have a quick look at this article. I'm not going to read this all. I'm just going to skim through it. I'm going to leave a link to this in the description on the video. I'm also going to put a link in to the Conservative Twins video where they go through the Terry Crews, Don Lemon interview, and you'll see on that, the way that Don Lemon carries on is blatant leftist tactic. As soon as the person he's meant to be interviewing actually tries to answer a question, he just speaks over him. I really cannot stand Don Lemon. He is the ultimate hypocrite. So anyway, let's have a look at what Esther Kweku says. As I said before, I dared to question the aims of Black Lives Matter and got the worst racial abuse I've ever suffered. So Esther says that when she moved to the UK from Ghana with her family as an early teen, the country that welcomed me was one where multiculturalism flourished and neighbours were warm and unassuming. I'd agree with that. I grew up in a very multicultural environment. I grew up in South London. I went to the same schools as these people that claim to be oppressed, etc., etc. I had the same opportunities or lack of opportunities as they did. I didn't have the best start. I didn't leave school on good terms, let's put it that way. I did some pretty stupid stuff when I was young, but, I got off my arse. And I worked hard, to improve my life. So let's go back to her article. Your achievements were not prefaced by the colour of your skin or your place on the totem pole of identity politics. People from ethnic and racial minorities were not constantly looking over their shoulders and assuming that every social interaction was laced with disdain or racism. It was a Britain where confidence triumphed victimhood. Absolutely, that is what this country is about. If you want to put the work in, you can get everything you want. You can aspire to be whatever you want to be. Okay, you might not always get to be what you want to be, but if you work hard, you can have a good life. No one's going to stop you from doing that. So, much to my dismay, the tone has shifted entirely and worryingly over the past 5 years. That'll be the past 5 years where Labour have not been in power, same as the past sort of 4 years that they haven't been, the Democrats haven't been in power. in America. So they shift the narrative, the mainstream media support them, and they create chaos. Usually every election year in America, it's the same thing over and over again. So Esther carries on to say, now I, a 24-year-old black woman of West African heritage, am expected to be mortally offended if anyone dares assume that my dark skin might signal heritage not native to the British Isles. I'm expected to voice loudly my approval of white liberals who inform me of my inherent oppression as a woman of colour. Absolutely amazing. Let's just go and have a quick look at some of this stuff here. So, what did she post? Earlier this month, I tweeted, "Are Brits still allowed to be proud of their culture and heritage, or is that racism now?" I also said I was fairly sick of all the protests. Last week, I made clear that I do not support Black Lives Matter, adding, "Never have, never will. I don't need to put a black square outline or tie myself to that organisation to prove that I care about black people." You know, that's the same for me. I don't think, black people should be oppressed or anything like that, or victimised. I've never done that myself. I'm not going to stand here and justify my position. I know what I stand for. So some of the comments that she received on social media following the tweets have been truly shocking. I have been targeted by a campaign of abuse, hate and false information aimed at tarnishing the reputation of a black woman. I wake up every day to horrible messages. Most of this abuse was seemingly coming from black supporters of Black Lives Matter, including a significant amount from African Americans. Although I've also been abused by white liberals. What a joke. Some of the trolls have circulated a fake image, which they falsely suggest is me. It shows a black woman on her knees posing as the seemingly subservient cartoon dog Scooby-Doo and flanked by 4 white women. I have had racial language used against me that is as bad as the N-word. This just shows the level of hatred that comes from this far left movement. They don't care what colour you are, if you're black, white, brown, whatever. If you question their narrative, then that's it. They're on for you. She says that some people have said that they hope I am barren. Lovely people, aren't they? Here's some images from a protest. She says, "I've been horrified to watch this ridiculous campaign of tearing down statues and relics of British heritage escalate. It is a campaign that has yet to make any progress in tangibly helping me as a black person." And they won't. That's the truth of it. So let's have a look down here. The slogan of this campaign is indisputable. We've covered that. At a simple glance at the Who We Are section of its online funding page, I did some videos on this before, so go back and have a look. It says, this organisation is about much more than Black Lives. It's interesting because, the interview where I say Don Lemon claims that, no, they're only interested in Black Lives, but they're only interested in certain Black Lives. Only those black lives that fit the narrative. I mean, this is openly telling everybody, that they're not interested in how many black people are killed by black people. Only black people that are killed by the police or by white people. Absolutely amazing. The group's GoFundMe page explains that it intends to be guided by a committee to dismantle imperialism, capitalism, white supremacy, patriarchy, and the state structures that disproportionately harm black people in Britain and around the world. And again, they'll say about the amount of black people that are arrested or those that are stopped and searched, etc. You only have to look at the crime rates to see, it's a sad fact, and it is a fact. In America, you've got 6% of the country is black male. They account for 52% of all the murders in the whole country, and they account for 48% of all the murder victims. That's a fact. amazing. Black Lives Matter, yep, but only certain black lives. The group, however, appears determined to spend the money on a string of Marxist initiatives, which according to its GoFundMe page includes developing and delivering training, police monitoring, and strategies for the abolition of the police. I think it's great now that the police wear body cams, especially in the US and in the UK. You know, we're seeing now, you know, if people get pulled over in a car, number one, the first thing I see these people doing is not cooperating with the police, being abusive, and then they scream racism. I mean, what a joke. We've had 2 athletes in London yesterday do exactly that. Apparently the police have referred the case to the Police Complaints Commission, and they've done so on their side. And I think, you know, the police have to be able to police. Skin colour or race shouldn't come into it. If an offence is being committed or there is a suspicion of an offence, they should be able to act. They shouldn't have to think, oh, hold on a minute, that person's black, I won't stop that car. It's an utter joke. Like I say, I'm going to post a link to this. Let's see here. We need to wake up and see that people are trying to divide this country and are using minority groups to do it. First it was statues. Then it was a potential ban on Swing Low, Sweet Chariot being sung at rugby matches. When will this end? This small faction of left-wing activists will never stop trying to tear this country apart and shaming every aspect of British heritage. It is incumbent on all of us to fight this through education, a fierce defence of free speech, and to call out hypocrisy of individuals and organisations attempting to weaponise minority groups to their political end. That is what this channel is all about. You know, calling out this hypocrisy. You know, it does make my skin crawl. She ends the article with, my parents taught me the value of hard work, honesty, humility, and standing up for the truth. I was taught to judge individuals on the content of their character, and I will never surrender to race baiters who will try to bully me into submission. I will never be silent, and neither should you. And neither will we on this channel. We are the voice of the silent majority. Until the next one.